All right. Oh, good afternoon, everybody. My name is MTI. I'm joined here by RotorStorm331,
Hello.
and and this is Final Fight 2, Carlos percent on normal difficulty by Nobleboy77. We wait for him to get started here watching the intro.
Well, I'm going to do the best I can to commentate on this. What the heck?
I think you probably have more practical knowledge of this game than I do, if I'm being honest, in terms of actually running the game. I just poke around in it and find values, and if anything seems like it might be interesting in the speedrunning sense, I let you know.
Alright. Does it sound like I'm echoing?
I am not actually listening to the restream, so I have it up. I have it muted though, so I couldn't tell you.
But anyway, we're getting ready to start off the run with Carlos Normal. And usually on stage 1, you're basically going to be dealing with a lot of resets, but for a marathon, we're going to go straight into it. But round 1 is pretty much the reset point for a lot of the runs. And right now, Nobleboy's doing a very good job of dealing with all the enemies coming up. He and Carlos and Maki can pretty much counter most of the enemies pretty quickly with their infinites. Hagar can do infinites as well, but not as good as these guys, especially with the hit stuns.
Right, so the famous Final Fight Infinite from the first arcade game and the first SNES game returns here, where you do basically as many basic punches as your character will allow, and then turn around and punch. And when you turn back around, it will basically reset the combo, and you can just do that over and over again.
Indeed, but there's also hit stops.
Yes. Also similar to arcade Final Fight, essentially the more enemies you hit at once with a punch, the longer kind of the delay is between hits.
Yeah, that can also happen even on single enemies too. So anyway, we're going into 1-2 now, and Nobleboy's doing very well cleaning up the house. Of course, he's keeping the crate off screen to get 2 of them at a time. Now, on normal and higher difficulties, you can keep that crate intact to despawn Jack. And depending on the difficulty of the game, you can like literally set up some despawns, keeping some of the objects intact.
Right, the crate counts toward basically the, I guess you'd call it the 3 sprite limit or the 3 enemy limit, although I didn't know you could use it to actually just spawn fewer enemies overall.
Oh yeah. Unfortunately, some of the despawns in the game do spawn new enemies though, so it's not always beneficial, but that's only for certain areas. Now normally there would have been 2 enemies right near the exit right there, but because we didn't kill any of the enemies, we got to eliminate most of them. Well, I should say Nobleboy got rid of most of them. So anyway, we're on 1-3. This is the final area of round 1, aka stages.
And this is also the first section of the game where the difficulty seems to actually come into effect. Everything in the first 2 sections of the game, from what I can tell, all the enemies basically are hard-coded with a difficulty of 0, and the formations are always the same. This is the first section here where enemies can have differing amounts of health and different formations can show up. For instance, on Expert, we won't see it here. There's actually an Andore Jr. that pops up in on this section here that Nobleboy is on.
Yeah, unfortunately that Atlas is giving him some problems. The blockers in this game are pretty bad in general. Not to mention they got the Zangief magic grab trick.
Yes, the the combination of being able to block and being able to grab makes them really some of the worst enemies in this game.
Yeah.
So here we see the in action here.
Yeah, Wall-On's pretty slow, so you'll be able to. Nobleboy's going to be able to easily counter his strikes before he attacks him. So he's now finished round 1. Normally we get a cutscene, and that gets skipped over, so we're on round 2 frames.
Yep.
So basically, if Nobleboy wants, he could literally throw this Scott right into a bowl and make that despawn. But he went ahead and chose to go after the rest.
So there is a plot to this game, not that you particularly care about the plot in a beat-em-up. That's why there are cutscenes between a few of the levels. The very short version is we are going on a world tour to rescue a couple of kidnapped people. Carlos, in this game, as far as the gameplay goes, he kind of takes the Cody role from the first Final Fight. He's sort of the balanced character between speed and power. In terms of the plot, he's essentially Guy. He's just kind of hanging out with Mike Hagar, chilling in his house when everything goes down, and he's just like, I have no stake in this whatsoever, but I want to help out anyway, and so he does.
Yes. Maki, the other playable character, takes up Guy's playstyle for being the fastest but weakest character, but she has probably the highest combo damage of chain attacks and probably the most high damaging extra joy in the game. And unfortunately, her family's kidnapped by the Mad-Gear game to get revenge on Hagar and his allies for destroying the game. I mean, the gang in the first game.
Yep. So, in terms of basic combos, the Hagar's is actually the strongest by a tiny bit. It does, I think, 54 damage base. Maki's does 52. The reason Keys is stronger than Carlos's is because she actually has a 5th hit in her basic combo, whereas Carlos has 4. Not that that's really a factor into a speed run, because you're going to want to be doing the infinite as much as you can.
Oh, yes.
You are correct that, for whatever reason, Maki's extra joy, probably because she is kind of the weak character and her attacks have the least range. This is just my guess. So I imagine the developers figured you'd be needing the extra joy a little more, and so they made hers do 10 extra damage base, 46 versus 36 for the other 2 characters.
Indeed. Unfortunately, I'm not a big fan of Carlos's extra joy, because that does give a second or 2 for enemies to get out of the way or whatever before it connects. It's kind of a big difference when you're trying to go for chain joys, which is essentially you replace the last hit of your chain attack for extra damage. More damage than your last hit in general.
Yeah, you can actually see the delay when Nobleboy goes for the extra joy. You can see he kind of pulls out the sword, and then there's a delay before the rest of the attack animation actually kicks in.
So anyway, Nobleboy's getting close to the end of 6-2. Funny note, Carlos can wield knives in this game like Cody does, but we don't really want to be using weapons a whole lot in speedruns in general, because we just deal more damage with our fist and all the other stuff.
Yeah, the weapons in the game cause instant knockdown, which is actually pretty useful casually, I would say. But their damage on the one hit that you get before knocking down is not as good as you get with just your basic infinite or basic combo attack.
Oh yeah. Anyway, in the previous screen, Nobleboy managed to despawn a Johnny because he kept the crate intact. That's why he went ahead and broke the crate right afterwards. Unfortunately, when you play this game, it's kind of hard to intercept the Roberts and Leons because they'll either walk up to you or just jump straight at you. But from my personal experience, once you have enough experience playing the game, it becomes almost second nature to counter those attacks. So you either jump up and expect an attack, or just try to move out of the way before they hit you with that leap.
Yeah, if they just decide to snipe you right off, you kind of just have to know that it's coming, know that they're the next enemy in the spawn order, and kind of be ready for it. Because their kind of jump attack is a very high priority. If you try to just punch them out of the air, it's probably not going to work.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, Nobleboy managed to despawn that bull a while back. So thankfully he didn't have to lose a whole lot of energy in that previous section. So he was able to reduce that number down to 2 enemies rather than fighting 3. So anyway, we're coming up against Freddy, aka Andori 2.0, because he fights pretty much like an Andori minus the rising knee that he uses. And basically, if you stay on Freddy's playing aside when he recovers, he'll charge, and if you land your attack in time, you can counter that. And kudos to Nobleboy for taking down Freddy quickly. So we're now on to the bonus stage. Nobleboy's going to be using his special to break 2 parts of the car. Then he's going to probably start breaking that one side, and then hopefully use the special. There we go.
Yep, and you can see he's hitting both parts of the right side of the car there at once with his special attack, the Extra Joy.
Yeah, Hagar's probably better for that bonus stage since, unlike Maki and Carlos, his lariat can hit both sides at once instead of hitting one side one time and then hit the other on the next swing. So now we're coming up to the point where runs will usually die for the most part. Holland, it's only 2 sections long, but this is pretty much of a gauntlet part of the game.
Yeah, they are 2 long sections. A section being defined, by the way, as when basically the screen fades out and back in. You'll see an elevator transition kind of in the middle of this first section, but it's still kind of section 1, part 1, and section 1, part 2, if you want to think of it that way.
Okay,
as far as
so
internally, it's all the same section. There we see again getting sniped by the Leon.
So anyway, Nobleboy had to pretty much get the enemies to run into these landmines. That one part where he just was at had like 6 landmines causes a lot of lag, so you have to get one of the enemies to get hit by it to undo that lag. And this part can literally eat up your time, unfortunately, no thanks to that Andori and all those enemies coming out. There is a way to despawn the Mark and Jack that spawn from the left when you start moving up to this point, but it's very hard to get the trick down. Alright, so coming up, Nobleboy's at near the end of the first part of the stage, and unfortunately he got the 75% box. I call it 25%/75% box because 75% of the time there's no food, and 25% of the time you get a very huge health restore item.
Yeah, that's something, once I get a little more advanced into looking into the game, I do want to actually take a look and see if I can figure out what the actual probability for that is.
Yeah, I just call it 25/75%.
So, interesting trivia about these Roberts and Leons. Similar to the first, the port of Final Fight 1 to SNES, where in the US, Poison and Roxy were replaced with Billy and Sid. Leon and Robert are similar. In the Japanese version, they're actually female enemies called, I believe, Mary and Eliza.
Yes.
And so the enemies were completely redesigned for this version of the game, the US version here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think that was due to Nintendo's policies at the time, I believe.
Yeah, Nintendo were a little draconian, let's say, in the NES and SNES eras about really about just about everything.
Yeah. But anyway, we're coming up to this final part here, and he's going to be battling. Noble was going to be battling all of the enemies that are going to be coming up. He went ahead and destroyed the barrel. Now, normally, if I was running it, I'd keep that barrel intact and get rid of this Elliot that would emerge. Because believe it or not, when you despawn enemies in this game, it does help out a bit, somewhat, since you don't want to be wasting time fighting all the enemies. I guess Nobleboy wanted to clean out the area faster. So it's kind of a double-edged sword in some cases. I guess Nobleboy's going to try to get rid of this Grandpa Andori first, before he breaks the barrels.
that makes sense. Because again, the barrels and crates and things, they count toward the enemy / sprite limit on the screen. So you don't want to be fighting Andores with other things if you can help it.
Yeah, especially the Elliots and Eliases and Alices and Johnnies. Unfortunately, in higher difficulties like Hard and Expert, they get a defense boost along with the Andores, so that makes them very hard to bring down.
Yep.
So Nobleboy's going to set up a despawn right here, and that basically got rid of all 3 enemies. Nice job. Also, depending on difficulty, what enemies you fight depends on your difficulty. So, my apologies. So anyway, what you fight depends on your difficulty overall. So we're coming up with Bracken now, and basically what happens with him, he's like got very strong attacks, but overall. Okay, I think I'm starting to echo here.
Like I said, I'm not actually listening to the stream, so...
Okay, my apologies. But anyway, Bracken's pretty much a powerful enemy in general, despite his simplest fighting style in general. But anyway, we're on stage 4, and right now Nobleboy's cleaning house. He wound up getting rid of that Atlas on the far left, so that was great. And right now, he's just basically trying to clear out the enemies as fast as possible, thanks to the Infinite. And we have to watch out now, because a lot of the enemies are starting to get a whole lot of more health. So, believe it or not, Nobleboy discovered an upcoming despawn coming up. I don't know if he's going to go for it. Alright, he's going for it. Alright. That was successful. He got rid of both of those enemies that he was dealing with beforehand. So all he has to do now is defeat the Elias, Jack, and Andori Jr. I mean the Andori, aka Hugo. Okay, so that clears 4-1. There's not really going to be a whole lot of health items for Nobleboy to pick up, but hopefully he'll be able to get through this stage with no problems. Plus, there's a hidden health up just before the fight with Philippe, so hopefully he'll get that as well. So unfortunately, normally you fight the more basic enemies most of the time, but stage 4 is infamous for like throwing the more difficult and harder enemies. So right now he's doing very well dealing with the enemies, and he should be getting done pretty much here. So coming up, we do have an Andori Jr. coming up. Nobleboy's going to get rid of this Elliot real quick, but he also has to watch out for the Elite that also emerges. Nice job. Alright. Thankfully, the Andori Jr. didn't charge items, so that was great. And unfortunately, the Eliases are pretty annoying because they love to go around you in a box formation and basically try to hit you from behind while you're too busy dealing with the enemies. So that was very impressive on Nobleboy's part. So we're moving onwards. Now, believe it or not, there's actually a despawn point, but we're not going to go for that because if we did that, we would trigger blockers, and we don't want that. Now, Nobleboy can easily avoid those firebombs by going at the topmost plane. I guess Nobleboy took that to get his health refilled, pretty much. And he jumped over that, so that way he saves a second or so, because you would normally stop at an earlier area. So anyway, we're coming up against Philippe. He's pretty much the weakest boss in the game, but he's pretty annoying with those slides and that cane of his. And if you're fighting him on higher difficulties, if he does the cane pummel on you, he will like literally wipe out your whole health bar. But that doesn't happen here because Nobleboy trapped him with the infinite. That was a perfect fight, by the way.
Yeah, it was very nice. Philippe actually has a decent amount of health, but he has 0 defense. He is the only boss in the game that has 0 defense, and that is regardless of difficulty. Doesn't have any defense.
Anyway, we're coming up to my least favorite bonus stage of the entire game.
This stage is terrible.
I agree. Ooh, no burns. Nice.
But he takes care of it. Very nice. I can never perfect that bonus stage. I'm just bad at it.
Yeah, I think I've gotten good to the point where I can almost get burned at least once. But now we're on the pre-ultimate level Italy, and this is when difficulty starts picking up a bit. We got about at least 3 short sections in general, but the first and second parts are pretty much the longest ones.
Yeah, you can see the enemies here definitely have some longer life bars than they have in the earlier stages.
Alright, Nobleboy's definitely going to go for the despawn attempt on Atlas here. Of course, you do need to start moving the moment you throw him because Atlas can sometimes recover too quickly, and that could be a problem if you're trying to despawn him, because if he gets up, that means you won't be able to despawn him.
Yep, looks like he got it, though.
Indeed. Oh yeah, I keep forgetting Johnny's always show up on higher difficulties. I always speedrun this game on easy mode for the most part. Funny fact, I used to do speedrunning of this game on expert when I first started out, and that puts a massive amount of strain, so please do not do that when you try to speedrun this game.
Yeah, the enemies on expert, as you mentioned, a lot of the time, besides having more life, they also have more defense, which kind of makes the increased life even more of a pain to deal with. Like, you'll see this on Dore Jr. here is actually a great example.
Yes.
Yeah, he did that infinite on Dore Jr. for a good while and is just now, taking out his final life bar, so...
Yeah, believe it or not, the charge attack for the Andores is much simpler than it was in the first game, since they always charge on whatever you're playing your characters on. So, if you speedrun this game, we take that invincibility item, the Genmaria Sai, and make sure we get through this area because we're dealing with Roberts and Leons, since we don't know if they're going to be jumping at us or not. Whoa, that was close. Alright, so Nobleboy's going to knock those guys down and try to hopefully despawn all of them. Ah, that's a shame. But yeah, it's possible to despawn all 3 of those enemies, and then just go straight into dealing with the Elix. You have to deal with 7 Elix in this part right here. You have to deal with like the first 3, then the 6, and then the final one comes after the last one gets defeated. So altogether, that's a total of 10 enemies in general. So if Nobleboy had successfully gotten rid of the first 3 enemies, that would have lowered down the amount of enemies he would have had to fight. So now we're on the 4th part of the stage where we're on the elevator. Looks like he plans to go after Leon first. And he successfully gets rid of him, got health up in time. He did get bear hugged by the Atlas. So right now he's going to corner these enemies. Unfortunately, by the time you get to the weapon users, it gets pretty chaotic. And he pretty much got through pretty quickly. Let's see how well he does against Rolento. He's the only returning boss from the first game. More of an apologetic way from Capcom to say, we're sorry we brought back Rolento.
Yeah, really this game, if I have an issue with it, or I would say my main issue with it is, honestly, it is less a proper sequel to Final Fight and more Capcom kind of acknowledging that, yeah, the port of the first one was, yeah, not up to the standard it probably should have been, and kind of them saying, yeah, here's what you should have gotten, just sort of with a different coat of paint on it.
That's so close. But other than that fight was good.
Rolento, or Rolent, as they call him here, being the most obvious example, but far from the only one.
Alright, so Nobleboy's now on his way to Japan, the final stage. This is essentially Uptown of Final Fight 2. So Nobleboy's going to try to knock out all three of those enemies and get them despawned. And he does it. He got rid of all three of those enemies, and now he's able to get the rest of the enemies to spawn for that stop point. It's kind of disappointing that the sword reach isn't that very huge. But never mind.
It's cool. But yeah, you're right. I actually don't know.
Anyway, we're now at the end part of the first part here. So Nobleboy's going to trap most of them and get rid of the two acrobats. Then he's going to try to get rid of that Andori Jr. and the last one. Very good. Good job, good job. Now Nobleboy's going to enter 6-2, aka the Eye of the Storm. And you'll see why coming up. Alright, I think he... I don't think he got rid of the Atlas. I mean, the whole point he was trying to get that Atlas to spawn, but unfortunately we wound up getting Mark. Now, if I was playing... if this was done on easy, a bull would have emerged on the left. And it's very hard to get that despawn because there's no real concrete way of knowing as to when you successfully get it or not. But then again, Elix are pretty slow, so it's pretty easy to despawn them pretty much. Unlike Elliot and Elias's, it's very rare to despawn those guys. And unfortunately, round 6 is when the Andori start becoming more apparent in most of the areas. Ooh, nice.
Yeah, not only that, but they're pretty big chonkers in round 6 as well. They're effectively mini bosses at that point, in terms of their life and their defense.
Yeah, aside from the Andoris, the blockers are probably the next worst enemy to deal with. Okay, now we're coming up to the garden area of this part, and this is where a lot of the time can be eaten up pretty much because you're dealing with Andori and all these minions merging from left and right. So hopefully Nobleboy can trap them all on one side and hopefully get them all grouped together and defeat them quickly. Ooh, that was close.
Yeah, that was nice.
Yeah, looks like Nobleboy noticed that Leon was about ready to emerge. And so far he's doing very well in this part. Usually, when you get to 83 seconds for that part, it's definitely the normal part, but it's very rare to get that area done with like 85 left on the clock. But yeah, right now Nobleboy's going to try to eliminate all these enemies before going all the way down, and that's because we got two Andoris fixing to come in. Yeah, you really want to keep the Andoris on one side of the screen, so that way they don't try to corner you or box you in pretty much. So he's going to trap them in the infinite and get rid of them both pretty quickly.
Yeah, but you can see just how many iterations of the infinite that actually took to get rid of those Andores and Andore Jr.
Yeah, we're coming up to another round of acrobats, as I usually refer to them. And thankfully this Grandpa Andori's doesn't have a very high defense, so that makes it a little bit more easier. So now we're entering 6-3, which is Blocker's Hallway, as I refer to it. And you'll see why. It's not because of these weapon users. Now, you do want to keep that barrel intact because if you destroy that and take out these weapon users before moving up to this force point, you pretty much have to deal with the weapon users in addition to the blockers, so you don't want to be doing that. So, I'm hoping Nobleboy gets some impotence on these guys because they can eat up a lot of your time just fighting the blockers. Not only having to worry about getting grabbed and palm thrusted, but you also have to keep an eye on them in general. Ooh.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, the grab. Like
Yeah,
also having ability to grab is probably the absolute worst thing, and the main new thing, I would say, introduced in Final Fight 2. A lot of the enemies in this game, they have kind of analogs to the arcade Final Fight. Of course, Andores are just Andores, but so this guy here, they're all like the basic red Doug enemies from Final Fight. Elias and Elliot are kind of like your 2P/J character, where they try to get behind you. The Alex are essentially Bilbols with weapons. But the blocker enemies, the blocker enemies in Final Fight 1 could not also grab you, and that is just mean.
Aside from high damage. Alright, that area was pretty nasty in regards to the Elix. But it looks like he's going to get rid of that Atlas, or did he? I can't tell. But yeah, there's like 2 acrobats that come into play at this point. I think he was trying to get rid of the Atlas, I believe, but I'm not really sure if that... Yeah, it looks like he didn't get it. Ooh. Just leave it to those Helix to do their charges. So basically, Nobleboy does do 3 of his hits of the chain, holds back and goes after the Atlas, and then tries to throw him. That's another bait trick you can use to get your chain throws on them. So anyway, we're coming up to 6-4. This is pretty much the last time we'll see most of the Mad Gear members. Alright, that was very nice of Nobleboy getting those guys hit with those fire bombs. So a funny fact is that you don't usually see the firebomber on the top left, and that's usually because the other one emerges on the right. I think it's programming error or something like that, because normally you would see like those firebombers be on like different planes. It's very rare to see them like on the same plane. So anyway, Nobleboy's coming up. He's going to keep this barrel intact. And that's to set up a despawn in general, because we do have a blocker coming up, but it also spawns alien to emerge. But technically, you do not want to be dealing with blockers, because that would like increase the amount you would have to deal with to like up to 3. So thankfully, this is the last force point where you have to fight the Elix. And there's 3 of them, and they're pretty annoying.
Yeah, the Elic blocker combination. Although really anything in a blocker is not fun to deal with. And especially that has the potential to go wrong very quickly. Because of all the damage they can do, especially here in round 6.
Alright, looks like Nobleboy's getting rid of the first 2 enemies first before going after the Andores. Now, if you're playing as Hagar, you can set up a vortex trap with the wall, but well, Nobleboy's using Carlos, so you won't see that, but it is possible to trap enemies in the wall with chain throws. It's just pretty bad damage overall. Oh, wow! I didn't think you could do that with Carlos. I guess I stand corrected. Alright, looks like Nobleboy's trying to get rid of the Andores. Now all he has to do is deal with that Atlas.
And there we go.
In my opinion, Ritu, the final boss of this game, is probably the easiest of the SNES trilogy, but at the same time, he's unpredictable. Kind of like the Elix and Roberts and Leons. So all Nobleboy has to do now is pretty much trap him in the infinite and hopefully not drop it, but he should have no problems with this. Unfortunately, in Hagar's case, he has to resort to chain throws because you don't really get enough time to get that speed. Unless you're playing with 2 Hagars.
Right, which can be doubly annoying because Retu a lot of the time will just acquire magical throw protection, or you will instantly break out of it.
Yeah, that's pretty much with all final bosses and final fight. Alright, GG for Nobleboy. He beat Retu and with 3408. Congrats to Nobleboy. So anyway, when you beat this game on higher difficulties, more of the ending becomes available. You do have to unlock experts to see the entire thing. But anyway, we only get this part of the ending since this was played on normal. But anyway, congratulations to Nobleboy77 for a good offense run. Also, I want to give quick shout-outs to him for letting me and MTI commentate on his run. Hope he appreciates it.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you to Nobleboy for that.
I don't think there's anything for me to commentate or anything in general. But if there's one thing I forgot to mention in that final fight with Retu, it's that when Retu recovers, you do have to respect his recovery because he can really punish you very hard if you try to go after him.
Yeah, like a lot of beat-em-up bosses, if you just try to... he has what's called Wake Up, basically invincibility, or his attack will take priority, so you do need to respect that. And basically, if you knock him down, you just kind of lay off and see what he's going to do, and then counterattack.
But yeah, that's going to be it for me for commentary. Me and MTI will be back for Final Fight 3 in a few minutes. So we're going to go ahead and hand it over to the guys at SpeedGaming and take it from there. Thank you all for having me. I'll see you all in a few minutes.
Be back soon.